Gio Reyna was said to be the next American superstar in football, with even some saying he could end up being better than Christian Pulisic and become one of the best players in the world. And if you saw Reyna balling out for Dortmund during his teenage years, you could see why. His talent was immense and there to be seen, even sometimes being mentioned in the same breath as his teammates Erling Haaland, Jude Bellingham, etc. However, unlike his peers who went on to different clubs and are succeeding in their careers, it seems like Gio Reyna is stuck and is not progressing whatsoever, and the once American golden child is already being labeled as an injury-plagued flop at just 22 years old. So what happened with Gio Reyna's career, and how has he regressed so much? Was it because of external drama surrounding his name? Is it only due to injuries? Or is there a mix of both and maybe even more issues? Well, let's take a look at the career of Gio Reyna, how he's flopped so far, what's gone wrong for him, and whether he can bounce back or not. Giovanni Alejandro Reyna was born on November 13, 2002 in Sunderland, England, due to his father Claudio Reyna playing for the English club Sunderland at the time. That's right, if you didn't know already, Gio Reyna's father, Claudio Reyna, was a former professional footballer and played for clubs such as Wolfsburg, Manchester City, Bayer Leverkusen, Rangers, etc. But Claudio Reyna wasn't just some ordinary footballer. He's American soccer royalty, being one of the best players this country has ever produced, and even was the captain of the national team at the 2006 World Cup. And with Gio Reyna having his dad's genes and love for the game when he was born, you already know that he was bound to become a professional footballer just like his dad. But not only that, Gio's mom, Danielle Reyna, was a former ex-professional soccer player as well, with her even representing the United States women's national team at times too. So Gio was born into a soccer family, and his rise to the top was only natural. And when Gio turned 5 and the rest of his family moved to New York, Gio's love for football only grew. And oftentimes, he would play football with his older brother Jack and his friends, and that's how he developed his skills, while also being in the New York City FC Academy later on. However, regarding Jack, Gio and the rest of the Reyna family would go through a ton of heartbreak and hardship, with Jack Reyna passing away from brain cancer in 2012 when he was only 13 years old. And the next few years after Jack's death were very difficult for Gio and the rest of the family, and Gio used sports, especially football, as a getaway. And with more time working on his craft in this sport, he became exceptionally good at it compared to his peers. And after a couple of years of watching him playing the game, Gio was signed for the New York City Academy, where his dad Claudio was a sporting director for a couple of years, and Gio would develop his game at a tremendous pace thanks to his own work ethic, and also thanks to a former Real Madrid Academy and Spanish coach, Jose Manuel Lara, who helped Gio develop into a playmaker in the center of the pitch rather than just a right winger who relied on pace. Eventually, after balling out for NYCFC at a tournament in Madrid, where the club lost to Atletico Madrid on penalties in the final, a lot of European clubs would start to take notice of Gio, and one of them would obviously be Borussia Dortmund. Then after the next couple of years, Gio established himself as one of the best players in the US for his age, even playing a year up for the national team. And in July 2019, Gio Reyna would finally sign for Dortmund and join their academy. And from July to mid-January 2020, Gio Reyna would excel in the Borussia Dortmund academy. In the UEFA Youth League, Gio would score 4 goals and grab 2 assists in 4 games. And in the Under-19 Bundesliga, Gio would grab 4 goals and 5 assists in 11 games, which is also pretty good too. Then during the winter camp training session with Dortmund, Gio impressed the coaches so much that on January 18th, 2020, Gio Reyna would get his Bundesliga debut for BVB in the 5-3 win against Augsburg, where he would come off the bench in the 72nd minute, becoming the youngest American to appear in the Bundesliga, breaking Christian Pulisic's record. A couple of weeks later, on February 4th, Gio Reyna would then secure his first professional goal in a 3-2 defeat to Werder Bremen in the DFB Pokal Cup round 16, becoming the youngest goal scorer in German Cup history. And I still remember being in high school when Gio Reyna scored this goal. I literally recorded that goal and made it my Snapchat streaks too that I sent out later that day. I'll never forget it. A couple of weeks later, on February 18, 2020, things will only continue to get better for Gio Reyna, with him becoming the 3rd youngest player to ever appear in a knockout game of the Champions League at the time, with him coming on as a substitute in the 67th minute against PSG. And 9 minutes later, Reyna would set up that early Haaland game-winning goal for Borussia Dortmund in the first leg of the round 16, becoming the youngest American to play and record an assist in the Champions League game. However, the football world was put on pause with COVID-19 running rampant, and a teenage Gio Reyna was stuck alone in his apartment, which was definitely tough mentally. And although Gio was meant to play in that 4-0 win against Schalke that every football fan watched, let's keep it real, he suffered a calf injury during the warm-ups, but returned a couple of weeks later in the 2-0 win against Wolfsburg. It was a small injury, but this would kind of be the start of the unlucky domino effect regarding injuries that would be cursed upon Gio Reyna. But not in the 2021 season, because in this campaign, Gio Reyna would experience his breakout year. I mean, as an 18-year-old in his first full-fledged campaign, Gio would bag himself 7 goals and 8 assists in 46 games. That's insane. More specifically, on September 14, 2020, Reyna would start and score a free kick in a 5-0 win in the DFB Pokal Cup against Duisburg. And then 5 days later, he would score his first Bundesliga goal in a 3-0 win against Borussia Mönchengladbach, becoming the 2nd youngest American to score in the Bundesliga, 100 days older than when Pulisic scored his first goal. Around a month later, on October 3rd, Reyna assisted 3 goals in 1 match in the 4-0 win over Freiburg, helping Haaland score a brace and assisting from a corner to Emre Can. And he became the first American to record a hat-trick of assists in one of the 5 major European leagues since 2008, and became the youngest ever player to do that in the Bundesliga. Over to December 5th, Gio Reyna would score his 2nd Bundesliga goal against Frankfurt thanks to his near-post finish, becoming the 2nd youngest American to score twice in the league. And later in December, Gio would be named US Soccer's Young Male Player of the Year for 2020. And then towards the end of the season on May 13, 2021, Gio Reyna would play in the DFB Pokal Cup final against Leipzig, becoming the youngest American to play in a domestic cup final in Europe, and played a part in Dortmund winning the cup that season, meaning Gio did too obviously. And due to Gio's strong youth performances, he was on the final shortlist of the 2021 Golden Boy Award, finishing 6th place, and the 2021 Copa Trophy, finishing 9th. Additionally, Gio Reyna would play well this season for his country, the United States, because back in November 2020, a day before his 18th birthday, Gio would make his national team debut against Wales, and then the following games, Reyna started and scored his first senior team goal in his 6-2 win over Panama. And then moving on to June 2021, Reyna will play for the United States in the first ever edition of the CONCACAF Nations League, scoring the goal that would equalize the US from 1-0 down to Mexico in the final, and eventually was a part of that chaotic and entertaining 3-2 win against rivals Mexico in the final to win the country's first ever Nations League. So from everything that I said, Gio Reyna's breakout season was something special, and after taking the number 7 shirt for the following 21-22 campaign due to Sancho departing to Manchester United, it seemed like Gio Reyna was only going to get better in the following campaigns. But the 21-22 season ended up becoming a nightmare for Gio Reyna, because although he started off the season hot, scoring 2 in the first 3 Bundesliga games, he would receive a hamstring injury in the World Cup qualifying game against El Salvador away from home, and this would keep him out all the way to early February 2022. But after he got back, he would play a few games for Borussia Dortmund, before getting injured again on February 6 against Borussia Mönchengladbach, where he appeared to re-aggravate the same injury that sidelined him, and him limping off after half an hour with tears on his face was just a crushing sight to see. But luckily at the time, it seemed like Gio avoided a serious injury, and he would come back after only a couple of weeks, and due to that, he got called back to the United States squad for the last international window of the CONCACAF World Cup qualifying, and he would have that double against Mexico where he would get by 6 players at the Estadio Azteca before being dispossessed. And after that match, it was compared to Diego Maradona's goal of the century at the 1986 World Cup, which was also at the Estadio Azteca. From here on, everybody thought that Gio Reyna was going to start to come back after being out for a long time. But then in the Bundesliga match against Stuttgart, after only 6 minutes on the pitch, he felt that very same hamstring injury again and was forced out of the game, this time with even more tears on his face compared to before. Seeing this happen to Gio just 1 year after his breakout season just hurt to see, and all of us USA and Dortmund fans were hoping that this was just a rough year and on a tale that would continue throughout Gio's entire career. Sadly though, it's been the latter. Now regarding club football, Gio would actually have a decent season for Borussia Dortmund in the 22-23 campaign, and it seemed like he was turning it around somewhat. Despite facing a couple of minor injuries here or there, Gio Reyna would play 30 games a season, more than double compared to the prior campaign, and he would get 7 goals and 4 assists. More importantly though, in Borussia Dortmund's title push, Gio Reyna was clutch for the side. He helped grab all 3 points in the 4-3 win over Augsburg thanks to his goal. His important goal against Mainz 1 week later helped BVB win 2-1 over that club, and in the 3-3 draw against Stuttgart, Reyna scored that goal that helped Dortmund ensure themselves at least 1 point. However, in the must-win game against Mainz on the last day of the season to secure the Bundesliga title, Dortmund were 2-0 down in the first half, and after Gio Reyna came on the pitch, he would grab 2 assists to help Dortmund bring back the game 2-2. But sadly, in a game in which Reyna maybe should have started, Dortmund would only get a draw against Mainz, and they would choke the Bundesliga title to Bayern Munich. If you want to learn more about this dramatic choke, check out this video I made on that. I dive way more into detail for this Dortmund choke. But like I said, Gio Reyna enjoyed a pretty decent season for himself. I mean, he literally had the second best minute per goal ratio of a top 5 European League player for the 22-23 season, only behind Erling Haaland. He also did other things too, like getting abrasive assists against Copenhagen in the Champions League, becoming the first American to do that, etc. But this season would have some drama surrounding Gio Reyna's name, more so regarding the United States and the World Cup, a tournament he was obviously selected for. The thing is, despite Gio Reyna obviously being one of the most talented players on the national team, he only played a grand total of 52 minutes in 4 games, starting 0 of those. He only played 7 minutes against England in the second group stage game, played 0 minutes against Wales and Iran, and then played the entire second half against the Netherlands in the round of 16 after Berhalter realized that starting Jesus Ferreira for the first time in a knockout game probably was not the smartest idea. Greg Berhalter is low-key a dumbass. Anyways, the drama started with Greg saying that Reyna wasn't starting or playing due to injury, but Gio said himself that he felt fine, so there was already some miscommunication going on. Then after the United States were eliminated, Greg Berhalter went to some leadership conference and spoke about a player on his team anonymously, saying this certain player wasn't meeting expectations on and off the field, and they were ready to send the player home, but ultimately just had one conversation with him and that was that. But 1 + 1 = 2. We all knew that Greg Berhalter was referring to Gio Reyna. Then The Athletic came out with an article saying that Reyna showed a lack of effort in training ahead of the match against Wales, and then also in a friendly scrimmage against Qatari club Al Gharafa. Then due to all of this, Reyna issued an apology to his team members and several players spoke up to hold Reyna accountable, and after that, the issue kinda ended there. But yeah, Berhalter lied about it after the World Cup and opened a whole new can of worms. Gio Reyna would then make a public apology on Instagram, taking accountability, apologized to his teammates and coaches for this, and even threw a dig at Berhalter, saying he thought things would remain in-house, but I guess not. Not only that, it was mentioned that before the World Cup, Greg Berhalter told Gio Reyna that he would have a very limited role at the tournament, and because of him saying that was the reason that Gio threw this entire fit in the first place. And to be fair to Gio, why would a coach tell one of his most talented players that he's not going to have that much of a role at a tournament that hasn't even started yet? Why was that even a conversation point? What the hell? What was the point of discouraging one of your own players before the World Cup? What makes the situation even crazier is that Gio Reyna's parents, Danielle and Claudia Reyna, were very close to Greg Berhalter and his wife Rosalind. In fact, Claudia was Berhalter's best man at his wedding, and Rosalind and Danielle Reyna were best friends, I'm pretty sure. Basically, their relationship spanned throughout decades. But after the World Cup, Greg Berhalter made a Twitter account and made a post talking about an individual who contacted US Soccer with the hopes of taking Berhalter down. And guess who those people were? Yeah, it was the Reynas. TLDR, Greg Berhalter kicked his wife Rosalind on the ground in a college a couple of times, and due to this domestic violence incident, the pair separated. But after Greg told his family members, apologized to Rosalind, and sought out therapy to make himself better, they reconciled and they have been a couple/family ever since. Keep in mind, this happened over 30 years ago, and the Reynas brought this up after the 2022 World Cup, more specifically the mother Gio Reyna, who said she brought this up to the US Soccer sporting director at the time, Ernie Stewart, because she was frustrated by the comments made about her son from Berhalter. But it wasn't just Danielle, it was also Claudio, who sent multiple messages to the USMNT general manager at the time, Brian McBride, and Ernie Stewart during the World Cup, sharing his frustration about Gio's experience. And if you want to dive more deeply into the drama, check out my good friend Max's video on this. He dove way more into it. But the reason I brought this up was to show how Gio Reyna's parents were getting in the middle of his career, causing harm to it, literally. And this wouldn't even be the first time either, but we'll get to that. The soccer mom behavior was holding Gio back, and now there's a stain on his character wherever he goes, as some entitled lazy player who has attitude problems, even though he was the only one who took accountability for this situation, but whatever. Let's just move on to the 23-24 season, where Gio Reyna wouldn't play so well. Yes, he had a couple of injury issues, but it wasn't that bad compared to the seasons prior. Regardless of that, Gio played 24 games and didn't manage to score a single goal and only collected 2 assists, with only one of them being in the Bundesliga for Borussia Dortmund. In a season where Borussia Dortmund made the Champions League final, Gio Reyna played little to no part in that. In fact, he wasn't even there for the second half of the season, because he got loaned out to the relegation battle of Nottingham Forest side, where he would only play 10 games and managed to get 1 singular assist. Yeah, Gio Reyna's primarily a 10, and he decided to go out on loan to a Premier League side that already had Morgan Gibbs-White. What was bro thinking? Well, he wasn't thinking. This was all on Claudio Reyna, the father. That's because according to CBS, Reyna's former agency, Wasserman Media Group, was against this deal to happen. But after they were replaced by Jorge Mendes, Claudio Reyna advocated for the move to Forest. And that's what Gio got, turning down moves to Marseille, Sevilla, and fellow Premier League side Wolverhampton Wanderers. Claudio interfered with Gio's career again, and just like last time, it only hurt Gio Reyna's career. Nottingham didn't even make this move permanent, and why would they? He didn't even do anything. For the national team though, Gio Reyna did get a goal, and although he was underwhelming just like the rest of the national team at the Copa America, where the United States became the first host nation to get grouped, he scored in the CONCACAF Nations League final in 2024 against Mexico in a 2-0 win for the United States to three-peat the Nations League, so well done for that, I guess. But now we're at the most recent 24-25 campaign, where yet again, Gio Reyna has been underwhelming. He hasn't progressed whatsoever. He had an injury that would keep him out for almost 3 months, and after only playing 26 games, mainly coming off the bench with him only amassing a grand total of 341 league minutes, he only managed to score 2 goals and get 1 assist. Additionally, for the United States under new manager Mauricio Pochettino, Gio Reyna only played a grand total of 10 minutes under him, and that was in the 3rd place game against Canada in the Nations League. That's all he's done. Honestly, if Gio doesn't turn around his career for this upcoming season, there's a very realistic chance that Poch could leave him out of the 2026 World Cup roster. It also would have been nice if Gio could have played the Gold Cup with Pochettino, as that would have helped the coach get to know him a little bit more, but he had to be with Borussia Dortmund for the Club World Cup, where in the 5 games that Dortmund took a part in, he only managed to play a measly 12 minutes against South Korean side Ulsan. Yeah, that's about it, and that's where Gio Reyna's career is at today. He looks like he's regressed in his career, whether it's due to lack of effort or injuries, etc. He's nowhere near the level of what he showed when he burst onto the scene. So what's going on with Gio Reyna that caused him to have an early downfall of sorts? And is there any hope of a revival in his career? Well, let's take a look. A couple of months ago at the time we were recording this, ESPN published an article called "Is it time for USMNT fans to give up on Gio Reyna?" And this article brought up several fascinating points. In the 4 seasons since Gio's breakout campaign, he's only made 14 starts, scored 11 goals, and assisted 4, playing just over 4,000 league minutes for Dortmund, attempting 88 shots, creating 77 chances, and only tried to beat a player off the dribble 81 times, which is pretty underwhelming when you realize this is across a span of 4 years. Then the 24-25 season alone, 12 players have attempted more shots compared to the previous 4 years of Gio Reyna. 1 has created more chances, and 87 have taken on more defenders across Europe's top 5 leagues, which roughly means we have 1+ full season of professional soccer for Reyna across 6 calendar years, which is just depressing. The article does make a joke about how Reyna's parents basically played a part in where Gio's at today in a negative way, and how he's always injured. Regarding injuries, Reyna has missed 498 days due to injuries since his career began, for 17 different reasons. These injuries might be affecting the way Reyna is playing football, and why he's moving very differently on the pitch. According to Sport Logic, which tracks the physical outputs of players across 40 different leagues, it noticed that in almost 2,000 minutes Gio has played for Dortmund in the past 4 years, they've realized that Gio Reyna isn't sprinting much anymore. So according to the data, these are the stats of attacking midfielders who have played at least 270 minutes in the Bundesliga this season, and these are what players would usually get on average per every 90 minutes. But then you look at Gio stats, and in 3 out of the 5 stats, including max speed, high speed runs per 90, and sprints per 90, he's lower than average. And regarding decelerations per 90, he decelerates more than average as well. This just shows that he's not running as much as other Bundesliga attackers. For example, Florian Wirtz, who was Leverkusen's superstar, reached a max speed of 32.6 km per hour this season, and he's sprinting 25.6 times per 90, more than double of Gio Reyna. Speaking of Reyna, his max speed ranks last among all qualified Bundesliga attacking midfielders, and is last among all Bundesliga attackers and 8th to last among all outfield players. No other attacking player has sprinted fewer than 14 14 times per 90 except Gio. And the only players who have sprinted less than Reyna in the Bundesliga are 6 central midfielders. And comparing Reyna to only his Dortmund teammates in the 24-25 season, Reyna comes out with the slowest max speed and fewest sprints, even being below the 33-year-old midfielder Pascal Gross. Even looking at Gio's past seasons for Dortmund, he's been declining every year. And this past season, the number of accelerations and decelerations are the lowest they've been in the past 4 years. So as you can see, things have not been good for Gio Reyna, not just career-wise, but also body-wise. So is there any hope for a revival in Gio Reyna's career? Can he get his body to where it should belong? And what would be the next step in his career after he leaves Borussia Dortmund? Because he really should leave that club, bro. Well, I guess let's take a look at some of the positives. First, Gio Reyna is still probably one of the more talented players in the US national team, even if he lost his starting place, because it seems like Poch has made his mind that Malik Tillman, the new Bayer Leverkusen man, is going to be a starter at the 10. But that doesn't mean that Gio can't fight for the spot again. And with this talent, he does have some clubs interested in him potentially. There were reports of Olympique Lyon being interested in him, but they have to fix their finances before they make any signings, so I have no idea whether that will work. And there were some reports of PSV Eindhoven, a recent safe haven for American players to go to Europe, where Malik Tillman was balling out, and even the likes of Ricardo Pepi and Serginho Dest are still at. Problem is, the sporting director is Ernie Stewart, and I'm not quite sure if he wants to deal with any of the Reynas ever again. Otherwise, PSV would have been a perfect destination for Gio Reyna. So where should he go? Well, I've always thought he would do well in La Liga, a much more technical league, but I haven't heard any clubs linked to him from there as of late. There were reports of MLS clubs like LAFC very interested in him, but who knows? Wherever he goes though, one thing is very clear. He needs to ball out. This might be his last chance, so he's got to make the most of it, especially if he wants to make that 2026 World Cup roster. The good thing about Gio though is, he's still only 22 years old, and he just needs to get back healthy and get consistently on the pitch again. He needs to find a new way to prepare himself, find a new club, and he's young enough to turn his career around. So let's hope for the best regarding Gio. And even if he might not be the American superstar that we all hoped he could be, let's just hope that he's an essential piece for the USMNT moving forward. But anyways, what are your guys' thoughts on Gio Reyna's career so far? And do y'all think he could turn it around? Let me know down in the comments. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe. I really appreciate it. And please be sure to follow my Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and join the Discord community. All the links are in my YouTube description. And last but not least, if you want to learn about how big of a mess the USMNT has been lately, especially this past summer with the 2 friendlies of the Gold Cup, you definitely want to check out this video right here. You won't regret it.